Hey there nation, and welcome to the show where we help you to play miniatures wargaming on a budget. It is I, Commander Cheapskate, and welcome to another episode of the Underhive's Most Wanted. This series is dedicated to the analysis of the Dramatis Personae fighters in Games Workshop's Necromunda. In this series, we'll discuss a character's rules, equipment, their strengths and weaknesses, their positive and negative impact on gameplay, and provide other critical information that will help you to dominate in your campaign of Necromunda. And on this episode, we will be discussing Klovis the Redeemer and his faithful companion, Deacon Malakev, from House Cawdor's Book of Faith. We will take a look at their stats, skills, wargear, and provide our insight on this Dramatis Personae for your gang. Now, the cool thing about these two characters is that they are actually classical characters from the Necromunda IP. You actually saw Malakev, Deacon Malakev, as well as Klovis the Redeemer appear in the earliest days of Necromunda, being published back in the mid to late 90s. In fact, their characters actually appeared in the Outlanders expansion for the original Necromunda box set, and there's kind of like a rogue redemptionist who just kind of drove around the wastelands in his Pulpitech, which is this stretch limousine that also had a podium on it where he would set and burn and kill mutants and people that he deemed unworthy for the cult of the redemption. So it's kind of nice to see this character come back into this present reiteration of Necromunda as well. And of course, we will provide our analysis. And because this video will be a little bit more of a deeper dive, I will put timestamps down in the description box below so that way you can navigate through the video as you see fit. So that being said, let's go ahead and talk about Klovis the Redeemer and his faithful companion, Deacon Malakev. Alright, so the first person we're going to start off with, of course, is Klovis the Redeemer. He is a house agent for House Cawdor, so the only way you'll be able to use this guy is either one of two ways. Either one, you are a House Cawdor player, or two, you are the leader, using him as a leader for an outcast gang. Now, with that being said, let's talk about his cost real quick. Now, because he's a house agent, his cost is a little different. What you have to do is you have to roll a d6 and add your reputation to it, and whatever value you get determines how much he costs to recruit him in your gang. Pretty much anywhere between 1 to 8, you can recruit him for 100 credits. From 9 to 15, you can get him for 200 credits, and 16 or higher, he will not work for your gang at all. So you do have to keep that in mind when you recruit Klovis the Redeemer. He's really good for low-level gangs, especially ones who are starting out, so that's something you might want to take into consideration when taking this character. So now that we're going to talk about his cost, let's go ahead and talk about his stats real quick. So Klovis the Redeemer has a movement characteristic of 5 inches, which is average, 3+ weapon skill. He's also got a 6+ ballista skill. He's got 3 strength and toughness, 3 wounds, 3+ initiative. He's got 3 attacks, 7 leadership, 7 cool, 6 willpower, as well as 6 intelligence. Now, Klovis the Redeemer's stats are horrible for shooting. He's only got a ballista skill 6, but it doesn't really matter though, and the reason why is because of his weapon. He's packing a master-crafted eviscerator, which is mainly good for close combat. It's got that 1-inch versatility range. At the same time, it's master-crafted, so once per game, he can reroll miss hits. Very high strength, cuts through armor, causes a lot of damage as well. And also attached to it is a flamer, which is actually kind of nice too. It's a strength 3 flaming attack, but that's the reason why his ballista skill doesn't have to be very good, because you could use that template blast in order to catch anybody on fire, so it works out all the greatness for him as well. At the same time, besides that weapon, he's also got the Book of the Redemptor, which is also very important for him as well. He's got flak armor, so he's only got a 6 up armor save, but he has an incombustible halberd, which gives him a 5 up ward save against blaze attacks, and he also has a pyromantic mantle, which means that his close combat attacks and versatile attacks, his eviscerator, are all full blazing traits, so that way you can set your opponents on fire as well, which is really, really cool. Alright, so let's go ahead and talk about his skills real quick. So he does have quite a bit of skills on this one. He has Devotional Frenzy, which gives him the ability to add D3 to his weapon skill, his cool, leadership, willpower, but he takes 1 damage. That one is not so really important for this character. He's got pretty decent weapon skill already. He's also got pretty decent psychology stats as well. He does have 3 wounds, so if you do need to use this ability, you do have that 1 wound you can eat up, which will be fine, so there's nothing wrong with that. He's also got the Fearsome skill, which is also kind of weird, and the reason why is because he has a special rule called Fearsome Reputation. We'll talk about that later, but basically for the fearsome rules, if your opponent wants to charge and engage you in close combat, to pass a willpower test first. So that's kind of nice, makes the Klovis the Redeemer a little bit more survivable. He also has the Restless Faith skill as well, which is a piety skill bonus, which is kind of weird as well, because but basically Restless Faith states that if this fighter ever goes into recovery, start the game with a flesh wound, and it's kind of weird because he is a hired gun, which means that if he does go out of action, he automatically makes full recoveries. so he doesn't really need the Restless Faith skill because he'll always be coming back. However, though, it is nice to have this skill because if you decide to make him into an outcast leader for an outcast gang, this will help him stay into the fight more. And we'll talk about a little bit more about that detail later on when I get to my conclusion. Now, he also has True Grit as well, which means he suffers 1 less injury dice, which is kind of nice. And if he actually takes any damage with only injury at damage 1, he can roll 2 damage dice and determine which one he wants. So that part's kind of nice. And at the same time, he's also got the Book of the Redemptor, which is actually one of his items that he actually has, which is actually pretty good. What ends up happening, he takes a basic action, and at the end phase of that round, any House Cawdor fighters that are within 6 inches of him, when their activation starts, they may either re-roll the D3 when making a charge, or they may re-roll a single natural roll or of 1 when making a hit roll. So that also kind of helps him out as well, makes him a little bit more of a support character with that as well. At the same time, he also has the Fierce Reputation special rule, which, like I said, was kind of weird rule to have, especially since he's got the Fearsome skill. And the reason why is because his Fierce Reputation states that anybody who wants to charge or even shoot at Klovis the Redeemer, they have to pass a willpower test first, just like you would do against corpse grinders. So having the Fearsome skill is kind of redundant because he automatically has Fearsome Reputation. I'm not sure if that was an oversight or whatever the case may be, but there's a situation that we have that as well. At the same time, he also could generate Articles of Faith dice. For this character, in my opinion, the best way to probably use him would be to use him as for the Path of the Redeemer. The Path of the Redeemer is actually, after all, named after him as well. And since this guy does a lot of close combat attacks, and Cawdor guys are usually close assault gangs anyways, it fits for them and it matches their play style. And at the same time, narratively, it also works because the Path of the Redeemer is named after Klovis the Redeemer, who is their prophet overall. Another thing you also got to worry about this guy too is that he is also an outlaw hired gun, so he can only be taken by outlaw gangs. So if you're a Redemptionist gang, for example, that could be helpful. Or if you're a House or a Cawdor gang that has become outlawed, they could also include him as well. And if you decide to become an outcast gang leader, that's also something that you got to think about as well. Overview wise, Klovis Redeemer is kind of interesting. He's a really good close combat fighter. He could also be a nice little bump in support for one of your assault fire teams. He's also extremely survivable as well, even though he's got a poor armor save and not that great toughness stats. We'll talk about a little bit more about his survivability here in a second. So he's actually overall a pretty decent hired gun, especially since the maximum willing to pay for this guy is maybe 200 credits. So up next, we're going to talk about Deacon Malakev. Deacon Malakev is the companion that follows around with Klovis the Redeemer. And when it comes to his cost, he automatically comes with Klovis the Redeemer, so he doesn't actually cost your gang anything, which is also kind of cool too. Now let's go and talk about his stats real quick for Deacon Malakev real quick. So Deacon Malakev's stats are actually quite horrible. He doesn't have any good stats. For one thing, he has no weapons, so that's probably one of the reasons why he's so horrible that way. But he's got a movement characteristic of 4+, a weapon skill of 5+, a ballistic skill of 6+. He's only got 2 strength, but he's got 4 toughness, so he's very resilient. He's got 2 wounds, as well as 5+ for initiative. He's got 1 attack. He's got 7 leadership, 5 cool, 7 willpower, as well as 8 intelligence. He does not come with any war gear at all besides armor, and the armor that he does have is like Carapace armor, which goes with a 4-up armor save, which is actually kind of nice. But his stats are absolutely horrible, and same thing with any weapons and equipment that he has besides that Carapace armor. That's one of the things that's interesting about this character as well. So let's go ahead and talk about Deacon Malakev's skills. He does come with Evade, which is kind of nice for him to escape close combat. Also makes it a little bit harder to hit as well. At the same time, he also has the lie low ability, so if he does get pinned, he can't really be targeted, which is also kind of nice for him as well. But the main reason why you take Deacon Malakev, even though he doesn't really do much anything in terms of fighting or stats, is that he has the bodyguard skill. What that basically means is that so long as he's within 2 inches of Klovis the Redeemer, anybody that manages to shoot at Klovis the Redeemer, the shot can instead go to Deacon Malakev instead. So like I said before, it helps Klovis the Redeemer be a little bit more survivable. So first of all, Deacon Malakev does have that 4 for his toughness, so he is a little bit more resilient. So most weapons will be winning him on a 5+, unless of course you have like a strength 5 weapon, which is going to be like strength 4 or higher weapon, which could be even at that point. But he also has that light Carapace armor, which also makes it a little bit more survivable as well, with that 4-up armor save too. So because of that, he can actually withstand quite a bit of punishment and keep those shots from getting to Klovis the Redeemer, who's clearly the more valuable fighter in your gang. So that's something I want to be taken into consideration as well. He also has the dedicated follower skill, which basically means that whenever Klovis the Redeemer deploys on the battlefield, Deacon Malakev must be within 3 inches of him, which is great because you really shouldn't be having Deacon Malakev run off on his own, but he should be protecting Klovis the Redeemer at all times. At the same time, probably his most important role that he actually plays is his role as a support character for your gang with two rules. The first one's called Scribe, which means he automatically adds D3 to your gang's reputation so long as he himself is not taken out of action or seriously injured by the time the battle ends. So if Klovis the Redeemer manages to, Deacon Malakev manages to survive, you can earn an additional 1 to 3 points reputation for your gang, so he's going to really help with that reputation generation for your gang stats, which could be really helpful. And at the same time, he also has the Liber Excruciatus, which is a tone that he keeps that he's always riding in as well. And so long as he is within 1 inch of Klovis the Redeemer, Deacon Malakev can then read from the Liber Cruciatus and use a basic action known as Know Your Fate. What ends up happening when you use this ability, D3 enemy fighters within 9 inches of Klovis the Redeemer must stop what they're doing and take a nerve test with a -1 characteristic to their cool characteristic on top of that. So for example, if you might be charging to a group of people and you want to even the odds a little bit, you could use Deacon Malakev to use the Know Your Fate ability, have some of those guys run away, so that way Klovis can then move in and just wipe out whoever's left over as well, which is actually kind of like what Deacon Malakev is designed to do. He's designed to be a support character for your gang, primarily protecting Klovis the Redeemer, making it a little more survivable, and also boosting your reputation and scattering weak-willed enemies. And that's exactly what he's designed to do, and he's perfect for it. Now let's go and talk about the positive impact that Klovis the Redeemer and Deacon Malakev have on gameplay. So these guys are really good for low-level gangs, especially if you have really low reputation as well. The thing about him though is even though he's good for starting out gangs and gangs with low reputation and middle reputation, your gang is gonna quickly outclass this hired gun very shortly. And the reason why is because of the weapons equipment that Klovis the Redeemer has and Deacon Malakev. You'll be able to better equip your fighters with better skills, weapons, and equipment, and they'll be able to outclass these two guys as well. Another reason why these guys are actually quite good is because they're good at boosting your gang's reputation. They get that D3 reputation point so long as Deacon Malakev doesn't go out of action or seriously injured by the end of a game, so that could definitely help out your gang to become more reputable and also to increase your stats. But at the same time, that will also cause your gang to be outclassing Klovis the Redeemer, which makes it harder for him to retain him in your service. So that might be something you need to look at as well. Another thing about this guy, of course, is the role that he plays in your gang as well. Klovis the Redeemer as well as Deacon Malakev make a great close combat fighters. They're also very survivable as well. They're actually really good for leading an assault fire team in your gang. So for example, let's say you're a Cawdor player, your leader can lead one half of your gang, maybe the suppressive element of your gang or the support element of your gang, while Klovis the Redeemer then leads the assault team to go forward. So that's something you might want to take a look at when it comes to this character and the build that he provides. So now that we're going to talk about the positive impacts he'll have on gameplay, let's talk about the negative impacts for him. So one of the problems is that he's got a fleeting presence for your gang. Because he doesn't stay with your gang after a certain point past your reputation, and the fact that he also boosts your reputation for your gang as well, he's not going to be sticking around. Once your gang gets enough reputation, he doesn't help you out anymore, and you can never rehire him again. So that's something you have to keep in mind with this character. Yeah, he's good to have when he's around, but he's not going to be around for very long. At the same time, he does have weak armor, and he has no counter for being pinned as well. So that's something you got to worry about with this character. And the thing that you also got to think about too is that he's also a Forge World exclusive miniature as well, which cons make him more difficult to field. He costs a lot of points. That's something you got to take him into consideration. He doesn't stick around very long, and you also have to pay out of pocket to purchase the miniature from Forge World, which could be kind of expensive and quite pricey, which might negate some of the reasons why you might want to take this guy into your guild as well. Another problem that you face with not just Klovis the Redeemer, but with any Dramatis Personae character is their viability in your gang, because after all, you could not spend your credits on these fighters and save those credits instead to make your fighters better. Either get them better upgrades, upgrade their equipment, their war gear, upgrade their weaponry. If they've been fighting enough scenarios enough times, they should have some pretty good skills and some stat bonuses. So the viability of including Dramatis Personae in your gangs is kind of a weird place, because yeah, in the short term they do a lot for your gang, but for long term, the longevity of your gang, they actually don't play that much of a big impact for it. So that's one of the problems that you run into when it comes to Dramatis Personae characters. Which brings us to our conclusion about Dramatis Personae characters. They're kind of in a weird, strange place with players, especially in Necromunda as well. And the reason why is because, on one hand, they are very expensive in terms of the point values that you must spend in order to recruit them for your gang. like I said before, you could use those same credits to buy weapons and equipment for your gang to make them better, instead of actually you going out and getting these Dramatis Personae and getting these higher guns as well. And at the same time, the actual price out of your pocketbook is also another contributing factor as well, especially if the miniature you plan on using is a Forge World exclusive. Now, if it's something that you can proxy really cheaply or cobble together from conversions, that's one thing. Usually, that's how most players do Dramatis Personae. They usually make their own, or they proxy with a much cheaper miniature. But if you decide to go with an official miniature from Forge World, for example, it could be quite pricey. And that's where that whole viability thing comes in for your gang as well. You're better off just saving your credits and your actual money to buy better fighters, weapons, war gear, etc., instead of spending the money for Forge World. And that's where the problem really comes in with these guys. Now, of course, there is a solution to all this, and I mentioned this earlier in the video, and that solution comes in the form of an outcast gang. You could easily justify the cost out of pocket, as well as the viability for this miniature for Klovis the Redeemer and Deacon Malakev, especially if you use them in outcast gang. You can make an outcast House Cawdor outcast gang with Klovis the Redeemer as well as Deacon Malakev in that gang, and that could be a very viable option because he becomes the leader of your gang. Therefore, it justifies having this miniature in your gang, as well as justifying the cost of actually purchasing the miniature from Forge World if you wanted to do that. Now, personally, I would never purchase the miniature from Forge World. I'd find some other way to do it, either by using a proxy or by using something else or anything else that I wanted to do that. But if you wanted to purchase the miniature from Forge World, you could do that as an outcast gang leader, because then it becomes viable. He becomes viable as a leader, he becomes viable for the purchase, and it actually makes a very powerful gang as well. In fact, I made a House Outcast gang roster for the Ramthian Succession using Klovis the Redeemer as a leader, and that list is very powerful, and that could actually really help you dominate in your campaigns on Necromunda. So there you guys have it. That is our overall look at Klovis the Redeemer as well as Deacon Malakev. As always, please feel free to like, comment, and or subscribe. Your guys' input is invaluable to us as always. Also, check us out on our other social media accounts with Facebook, Instagram, as well as blogger.com if you want to keep up to date with current projects and the hobby aspect of our channel. That's good for this week, guys. I am Commander Cheapskate. I will catch you guys in the next video. Peace out and stay classy, you guys.